When in junior high, I had a friend named Joanne who was a fantastic artist. During the summer months, we spent a lot of time horseback riding. Joanne had a little fox terrier that followed us everywhere. Joanne absolutely adored this little dog. When school started, Joanne and I got into art class together. One day, I glanced over to her easel to see what she was painting when I noticed her hand was shaking. I asked her, "Joanne, what's wrong?" She replied that she didn't know, but that she was feeling apprehensive about something. She started shaking so badly that the art teacher came over and asked Joanne what was wrong. By now, Joanne was crying so hard that the teacher told me to take her to the nurse. Joanne couldn't explain it to the nurse. After getting her to lie down, the nurse said she would call Joanne's mother to come get her. She went into another room and placed the call. A few minutes later, she came to the door and signaled me to join her in her office. She told me Joanne's mother was on her way and that I should stay with Joanne until she arrived. The nurse added that when she explained to Joanne's mother what was happening, her mother said she understood. 20 minutes later, Joanne's little dog had been hit by a car and killed. The connection between people and their pets is awesome. My family has long held a reputation among ourselves for ghostly and mystical occurrences. There's been so many that I could literally fill a book with them. But today, I'm going to focus on just one topic, and that's the wolves. We have a lot of children in our family. My 2 older sisters and older brother all married young and had 3 to 4 children apiece. And my sister's children are the ones who seem the most perceptive as far as the paranormal. The first time I remember hearing about the wolves is from my sister Deanna. She was living down the street from us at the time in a small 2-bedroom house. She was a single mother and her 2 children, Julia and James, lived with her. Julia was about 4 or 5 at this time and James was just a little baby. They shared a room directly across from their mother. Deanna came over one day and told us that in the middle of the night, she had gone to check on the children. She had been watching television and fallen asleep, and when she woke up, she decided to check the kids before crawling into bed, and found Julia standing by her window, looking outside. She was a little alarmed, wondering what her daughter could be seeing outside, and why she was out of bed. She went over and touched her, and got her attention. She asked Julia, "What's wrong? Why aren't you in bed?" And the little girl replied, "The wolf was howling and woke me up." Thinking that Julia must be alluding to the small dog her neighbors kept next door, she smiled and told her to go back to bed. She said not to worry, that it was just the neighbor's dog, and next time not to go out looking out the window because she wouldn't be able to see it anyway. And Julia replied, "No, Mommy, I saw the man with the big wolf looking in my window, and I got up to see what he wanted." That was frightening. Deanna was worried and took a peek outside herself, but saw nothing, of course. Julia didn't seem bothered at all about it. In fact, she seemed quite cheerful in her sleepy state. Deanna asked her to describe the man and the wolf. Julia said the wolf was large and gray, and stood beside this man with dark hair and dark skin, with braids and feathers. She said he was dressed funny, and that they seemed to smile when they saw her, and waved, and told her to go back to bed now. Sound like an Indian to you? That's what we thought. Wolves are long known to be protective spirits in many Indian cultures, and my family has Indian heritage, although diluted in later generations. Perhaps Julia has a wolfy guardian angel. This wasn't the last episode of the family of wolves, either. Later one time, when my other sister's oldest son, Robert, was sitting on my mom's lap when they were visiting, he looked at her shirt, which had a wolf on it, and said in a sing-song voice, "Grandma, look, that looks just like my wolf friend that visits me when I sleep." I believe in guardian angels. Do you? My story takes place during the summer of '89. My parents and brother were all coming home from going out to eat on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. We were loaded up in the family minivan and basically strolling down the rural road we lived on at the time, about a half a mile from our house. I just glanced to my left, out of the big side window, and saw a very large, smut black dog. He was just standing on the far side of the ditch bank. What made it so surreal was it seemed as if time was in slow motion, as the dog seemed to stare right into my eyes, as if he knew I was looking right at him. I knew for a fact there was no such dogs of this type around these houses ever, so it just gave me an ominous feeling of something strange, out of the ordinary. When we got home, I'd laid down on the floor in front of the TV as usual to watch wrestling. About that time, the phone rang. My parents made the statements, "Just got in the door and the phone's already ringing. I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm not going to answer it." For some reason, I just blurted out, "Answer the phone. Someone might have died." I don't know why I said it. Keep in mind, I was only around 8 years old at the time, so my mother picked it up. I listened to see if I could tell who it was by what she said. At first she was real quiet, and then she says, "Oh no, let me tell Ronnie." Come to find out, my grandfather, who lived between our house and the house where I had saw the big black hound, had called to say Old Man Blow, a man who had been suffering from Alzheimer's for several years, had been seen walking around in his front yard all morning reading the Bible, and just moments ago had shot himself right between the eyes with his pistol. So my father, brother, and I all ran down the path between our house and my grandparents' house, across the empty field to where Mr. Blow was found. Right in the spot where I saw the black dog laid the old man, dead with the gun still in his hand. He had been there when we drove by minutes before, but we never saw him in the ditch. I never saw the big black dog ever again as long as we lived on that road. Later on in my life, I've heard of so-called hounds of hell, which were spoke of in ancient folklore. These hounds were to have been seen, often when death or evil acts were taking place, or soon to follow. I think the big black dog I saw was there to draw my attention away from the old man in the ditch, so as to not anyway stop and help. So the demon dog could claim the hellhound soul from the suicide victim that lay just feet from where he stood. I don't know, but maybe it sounds plausible. Thanks for reading. I wanted to share with the group another story, this one a family story. It was right after World War I, and my mother's family were living in Shenandoah Valley, Virginia, right near the river. My mother's Uncle Joe was returning from the service and arrived by train late one night. He thought briefly about staying overnight in a hotel, but he was anxious to get home and figured that if he walked halfway across Europe, he could walk the few miles left to home. He set out along the road along the river. He had to cross the river to get home and had two choices as to the bridge to take, one low but nice, wide, new bridge, and an older, girdier bridge. He started for just the nearest bridge, the new one, which was also the shorter route. But just as he got to the bridge, he was met by Shep, the old family dog, who greeted him with great joy. They had a good visit. Then Uncle Joe set out onto the bridge again. At this point, Shep stopped and began barking. He even tugged Joe's pants legs. It was apparent that Shep wanted him to take the other bridge. Since this was the longer route, Joe tried to call Shep to come his way, but the dog only got more insistent. Finally, Joe decided, well, what the heck, let the dog have his way. So he went along to the other bridge, with Shep pacing him all the way. Eventually, Uncle Joe reached the home farm and called out to the family. Of course, everyone came running, and they had a tearful reunion. Joe said, "I would have been here earlier, but Shep made me come the long way." Everyone got a funny look on their face and asked him what he meant, so he explained the whole story. After a long silence and many meaningful glances, Joe's father said, "Joe, Shep died last winter." Next morning, they learned that the river, which had been swollen by spring rains, had flooded the new bridge and taken out the middle section. If Joe had walked in the dark that night, he would have surely been killed. True story. At least, That's the way the family has told it all these years. Thanks for reading. I've had many paranormal experiences happen to me in my life, some of them more frightening than others, but this being the most recent, have decided to submit it. I had 2 pet hairless rats for almost a year, about a month ago. I noticed that Mouse, the bolder and smarter of my 2 rats, was beginning to show signs of illness. When I mentioned that he was smart, it was almost frightening sometimes how smart he actually was. I would call him from his little box in his cage, and he would climb into my hand and sit next to me and watch TV for hours. He would stand on his hind legs when he wanted a treat, and give me kisses when I would make kissing sounds. He was one of the best friends I have ever had. His health rapidly deteriorated, and about a week ago, I regretfully planned to have him put to sleep. I sat with him on my lap for about 8 hours that day, waiting for my vet appointment, and wanting to be sure that if he died before the appointment, it would be in the comfort of my lap. On the way to the vet, he sat in my lap patiently as I drove through rush hour traffic in Phoenix. I stayed by his side while they gave him anesthetic gas to knock him out before they put him to sleep. I left before they put him down, but I felt a sense of peace now that I knew he was not suffering anymore. That night I went to check on my other rat Raisin, knowing that he was probably wondering where his friend was. I heard Raisin happily drinking from his water bottle. I entered the room to find Bubbles servicing in the water bottle and Raisin peacefully asleep in his box. Later that night, while falling asleep, I felt tiny claws and the weight of someone very small sitting on my arm. When I opened my eyes, nothing was there. I've seen Raisin acting strangely in his cage several times now, as if something is chasing him around. I know Mouse is watching over Raisin and I, and will always be around when we need him. I would like to keep myself anonymous, but I would like to share a story that happened to my brother, who I'll call G. This story takes place in Ireland and in 1964. My 2 brothers used to hike down to the Republic of Ireland from the north to visit cousins and aunts. Anyway, one afternoon, they decided to stop and ask for directions to see if they were on the right track, literally. It was G's turn to ask, so he trampled up a driveway that led into a cobblestone courtyard. There was a barn with hay and a tractor, and an old whitewashed thatched roof farmhouse. The odd thing was there were cats, millions of them meowing at him, rubbing themselves against his leg. He went to the front door and knocked on it. No answer. He knocked again. Still no answer. He pushed past the meowing cats and looked in the bay windows. He saw these cats sitting around a hole, looking in. They turned and looked at him, smiling. So he reckoned. G bolted for it, past the cats, who were now hissing at him. He ran screaming for E to come and check this place out, but E was already halfway down the road, running like buggery. A few weeks later, he went back with a few mates, but he couldn't find the house. Thanks for reading. I'll start off by saying that my boyfriend and I moved into a house together in late November 2005. When we looked at renting the house, we were only allowed to look in from the windows, not actually go inside. As we did this, I felt a strange connection to the house, almost as if it wanted me to be there, but wanted me to be warned off at the same time. I thought nothing of this feeling, so we rented the house. During the first week, my boyfriend and I, uncharacteristically, engaged in continuous fighting and grudge holding. After dying in a car accident 6 months earlier and miraculously being brought back, I vowed to live life and not hold grudges, so it's safe to say that this behavior was definitely not my personality. We broke up a week after moving in, only to find ourselves back together in less than a month. When we got back together, I moved back into the house, but again, a week later, we were fighting again. To try to savor the relationship, I moved out, but we stayed as a couple. Each time I went to visit or stay at my boyfriend's house, I got the feeling I was unwelcome, not from any person in the house. The feeling came from somewhere else. For about half an hour, this feeling would stay. Then the feeling would change to resentment, perhaps that I didn't leave. However, from the moment I would announce my intention to go home or leave the house, even just to go to the shops and return, I would get an overwhelming feeling that I needed to stay. A similar feeling to that of when you know you shouldn't be doing something in case something really bad happens as a result. As soon as I would leave the driveway, the feeling would disappear. I continued to feel nothing of the feelings, only that my boyfriend and I were trying not to step on each other's toes, and that the feeling may have been coming from his two dogs, not getting attention while I was there, therefore not wanting me there. I've always been interested in this sort of thing, but for some reason, it didn't click that this was something more until one night. At approximately 10:30 p.m. on a weeknight, which night exactly I can't remember, I was staying at my boyfriend's house. As we laid in bed, chatting before falling asleep, he started coughing. He was coughing so badly that I got up in a hurry and without turning any lights on, raced down the hallway to the kitchen for a glass of water. I was watching the ground so I didn't trip on a surfboard, which was leaning against the hallway wall. As I got about a meter from the end of the hallway, I looked up off the ground. What I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. There, standing in the middle of the hallway, was a dark-colored dog, medium to large in height, but quite thin. Thinking back now, it looked like a Doberman. It wasn't evenly clear, very smoky appearance. To be honest, my immediate thought was, how did the dogs get inside? I even opened my mouth to ruse on the dog for being inside. I think that's when I realized the hazy appearance and the fact that the dog was actually black. My boyfriend's dogs are bull terriers, same build as the dog I saw, but white in color. I don't remember that the dog showed any emotion towards me. It only stood there and looked at me, didn't wag a tail or growl. It simply seemed interested in looking at me. When the moment of surprise passed, I heard my boyfriend still coughing hysterically. The dog was still there and didn't move out of my way, so I walked straight through it. I got the glass of water and returned to the bedroom. Since this occurrence almost 2 weeks ago, I haven't seen anything like this. I most definitely still get the feelings upon entering and leaving the house, and I'm more aware of them, hence why I'm researching this topic. I asked my boyfriend about it, if he had noticed anything or felt anything. He agreed he felt something in the house, but wasn't sure how to describe it, nor was he concerned about it. If I could, I'd like some feedback on what your thoughts on this incident could mean, or how to look into it further by myself. Thanks for reading. It was back in the days when my parents had been married for only several years. I was not born yet, but it is they who told me this story that happened to them. So I am here to share my parents' unusual story with the world. It all started the day my parents went to Sunday Mass, just as they always have. When Mass was over, my dad had read a part in the Bible just before he left it, and it said the following: "You'll be saved today." My father told my mother about it, and they didn't think much of it at the time. Anyway, they were on their way driving home. Just as they were about to reach the four-way stop, a white German Shepherd dog appeared in front of their car. My dog was getting upset because the mysterious dog would not budge. He tried honking constantly, but still the dog just sat there staring into the eyes of my parents. So my dad decided to get off the car and was yelling at the dog to move, but it still did not move. So my dad went back in the car, and in the blink of an eye, there was a crash at the four-way stop, and a man was going approximately 70 miles per hour and hit a car that would have been my parents' car, but someone else got hit instead. So, it was then that their lives had been saved. After the accident occurred, the dog slowly walked away as it took one last glance at my parents, and it vanished. As they arrived home, my parents were so thankful they were still alive. If it wasn't for that dog, they would have both died. Later that same day, My dad told his best friend about what had happened to him and my mom. They went looking for the white German Shepherd, but could not find him anymore. I'm so thankful that the dog was there that day in that moment in time. My guess that it was God or some sort of angel. Thank you for reading. Hey guys, thank you so much for taking this opportunity to listen to my stories. If you've listened this far enough, I assume you have, and technically they're not my stories, they're from the internet. But besides that point, it's seriously nice to have a discussion with you guys and let you guys know what's going on in my life, which I'm not really saying much. But anyway guys, thank you so much. That's all I have to say, honestly. Really, that's all I can say. I'm really thankful for you guys' support. So go ahead, like, share, comment on this video, and leave more of that support, that gracious, that scrumptious support that's so amazing and that I appreciate so dearly because you guys mean the world to me. And if it wasn't for my dad-like figure appearance, then you guys wouldn't feel good. I don't know what that means. Just roll with it, whatever. And to the new people who are subscribed to my channel and you heard this outrageous outro, get used to it because this is how it's going to be for the rest of my outro career. Yeah. Anyway, guys, just ignore what I've been saying, except for the comment, liking, share, and subscribe. You gotta do that. But anyway, coercion aside, I'll love you guys, and I'll always love you. So, that being said, good night, good morning, and I'll see you in the next one. I've really been tripping up on my words lately. I don't know what's going on. Whatever. See you guys.